Hi everyone, this is Niharika. Today we have with us Mr. Daksh Kadian. To quickly introduce sir, he is currently pursuing his Masters of Law degree from Harvard Law School. After having received offers from prestigious law schools like the University of Oxford, University of Cambridge, Columbia Law School and NYU School of Law. After graduating from National Law School of India University as a gold medalist, he has worked as an associate at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas, after which he is now pursuing his Masters from Harvard Law School as a KC Mahindra Scholar. In this session, sir will guide us about the do's and don'ts of LLM from abroad. So we are very glad that sir could join us here and talk about his journey. That was my short introduction, sir. I request you to please introduce yourself to the audience, after which we can begin with the session.
Thank you for that generous introduction. I think that covers a lot of it. I'd be more than happy to guide in whatever ways I can and whatever questions that you think are recurrent in terms of your experience that you have faced.
All right. So you worked as an associate for a couple of years and then opted for your master's. So what was the rationale behind taking that decision?
Okay, so I think the rationale was two-pronged. The first and the very candid one was that I had certain amount of academic fatigue after having studied 5 years at law school. And so I wanted to take a break of sorts by working. But again, another reason second was I wanted to be sure I wanted to do an LLM. Right out of law school, I think I wanted to do the LLM just for the sake of the LLM. Not sure that in what area I would be doing it. I would not have any practical insights of the legal world. So therefore, I chose to work. Of course, I tried to applying at multiple places and eventually zero down on a disputes firm, a disputes practice at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas. And we used to specialize in insolvency and bankruptcy and banking disputes. After having worked there, I realized before joining, I had an inkling that, of course, insolvency and dispute resolution are the two areas that I am interested. But having worked there, it actually gave me some more confidence and some more insight. I was way more informed. And if I was to look at it in retrospect, I think it was a good decision to take that break and to work. Possibly I could have worked for longer and then come. LLM is always open. You have people from across the spectrum who have worked for 10 years, 4 years, 6 years. The more the experience is, the more you have the clarity as to what you gain out of this specific degree. But thankfully, I had that 2 years of experience. I got great amount of exposure thanks to my team that I used to work with, which was headed by these three partners, Ms. Mirsha, Vajant, and Mr. Siddhant. And all of them were excellent. And it was because of them that I was able to gain such broad spectrum of experience to having come here. And I think that experience was the first key to getting into the LLM. And second of all, giving me the clarity that I wanted to do an LLM. I think that's, I'll put it that way. Those were my reasons to work and then apply for the LLM.
Right. Could you please share with us the application process at Harvard Law School for international students? And how should one prepare for the same? And if you could also talk about any challenges which you faced during your application procedure and how you handled them.
So the application process is of course, it's way more comprehensive than the UK. UK is slightly easier in terms of applying. And even amongst the US law school, barring Yale, I think, where I did not end up applying because of the academic side of things that Yale looks at. I think Harvard would require a more comprehensive application because in terms of the personal statement is largely, if I was to say, divided into two broad heads. The first broad head is an academic essay. They'll ask you a question that tell us about a problem that you think exists in the country, in the area of law, etc., that you're working in. And what do you think can be the possible solution for it? Now, the problem again, the challenge of it is that you don't have 3,000 words to yourself. You just barely have 750 words to write this. At most, I'm saying. And 750 to at most 785. And I'll tell you how the dynamics of the personal statement work. So this is the first part A of the personal statement. And part 2 of that statement is the personal statement. What's your story? Now, that story is that what led you to do what you're doing today and what you have done today. It's not reiteration of your CV, it's contextualization of your CV and contextualization of you as a person. And they are actually not picking up just a lawyer or somebody who's working, they're picking up the person. That's the key of the application process. So they want to know you through that personal statement. That is the second part, it's part B of the process. The third thing is, of course, you have to submit your CV to them. And I think the third thing that they ask is very small, 3 questions that they have. They must be available online as to what do you want, where do you see yourself in so many years? Tell us about something that we cannot figure out from your application or your CV. That it can be a hobby, it can be anything that was there. Now coming back to the essay, and what was the challenges of it? First is, of course, I was saying the words. How the personal statement is, I told you there's a part A and a part B. So you total get 1,500 words, and you have the discretion to allot them. So it needs to be minimum of 700 words each. So you have, that makes up 1,400 words. So you are left with those 100 words with yourself as to how do you want to allocate. So essentially the challenge is to summarize them and put your problem right across as it exists, and provide a theoretical framework over a practical framework for it. Of course, they're not asking for something out of the box, because the problem that you're possibly going to highlight would be a complicated one, and it cannot be resolved or possibly solved in, let's say, a 1 paragraph explanation. But they require that kind of application of mind in that specific, and that's what I think requires. It's way easier to write longer pieces, it's very difficult to write a shorter piece. That was the first challenge. The second challenge possibly I had was time management, because I was working while I was doing this, and I didn't take an off. In a sense, I didn't go on a sabbatical to do my application process. Very rarely, few people do. Few people end up taking that. So that meant that I had to really manage my time. And how I ended up doing that is, during the quotas, of course, we used to have a lot of time in the middle. I was a court-facing lawyer more often than not. I was not on the transaction side of it. So the time that I had in court, I would do the readings which do not require a lot of application of mind. Let's say if I have to read about a professor, I have to read about the university, or there's just general things that I want to check. That is something that I'm going to do during the quotas. And it's during the weekend when I'll do my substantial writing, something that requires a lot of application of mind, etc. That I'll do over the weekend. Now, the challenge is that you really don't get enough time. You're working for almost, let's say, 3 or 4 months of your application process. So you really are not getting enough time, because 5 days or even your weekends, you'd be possibly busy on a matter in the law firm, because that's how legal practice in India works, and whatever time that you're getting. So it leads to some amount of like prolonged tiredness. So to say, so therefore you really need to allocate time really well, start a little bit in advance. I was slightly late to start. Now that I know how people are starting, I didn't seek so much of guidance before starting. So had that been, I would have started even 1 month earlier, and I would have been slightly better off, that was, I think, that happened. Thankfully, what happened is that just before the application ended, I ended up taking a 5 days off, 4 to 5 days off. So I used to work for 2 or 3 days during that time, but that was the only efficient time, because I really needed that time off to build up my appetite to work for those 2 3. So I think time management was one of the challenges in terms of coming to that. Another advice possibly can be wrap up with the administrative tasks really early. There are not so many administrative tasks when you're applying to, let's say, Oxford or Cambridge, but there are a few when it comes to the US. It can be possibly getting your LSAC documents. That is, you need to send your transcripts and your degree all the way from the India to the LSAC. That is assembly credential, something that they call. So you can possibly wrap that up early on. You can, if you need to write TOEFL, write it off, because some people say we want to apply for waivers. I didn't believe in waivers because I was not sure till December to which all universities I was applying, because for the longest, I think I was applying to certain universities and ended up not applying to them, despite my application having been ready, because that process was ongoing. I was reading upon them. So if you apply for waivers, you don't end up getting that kind of flexibility in application, because it may happen that you think you're in the middle of November, everything is ready, you think I'm going to apply to U Chicago. And let's say you don't have a waiver from U Chicago. From the on the language requirement. It may work out, it may not work out, but it's just safer to have that TOEFL and administrative things done slightly well in advance. Yeah.
Right. So what specific qualities do admission committees seek in applicants, which makes their application stand out, so to say? And could you highlight any errors or common misconceptions which you identified in your own application or in those of others, and how did you rectify them?
So the correct answer is no one knows, frankly. And of course, there can be conjectures, but really nobody knows as to what they are looking at. Nobody can give it in writing as to what they are looking for. But what they're possibly looking for is some sort of determination, hard work, and commitment. And I'm telling you, and because I'm putting it so broadly, because people are coming from so different arrays of life and such different geographies. For example, at Harvard, you possibly be meeting in your LLM batch people from, let's say, 70, 80 countries. So you really cannot have one parameter to judge that this person is good or this person is bad. There cannot be an objective parameter. So, but having said that, they look at the applications very, very, very closely, in the sense that they're going to deconstruct your personal statement, your CV. They know you inside out even before you have met them. So, and the second one is, of course, I'm telling you these broader characteristics of determination, hard work, and commitment. And the second, possibly, I think, is this willingness to create something, to innovate, to do something for their field. That is the second thing that they're looking at, this drive to create or innovate or to go further. I think these are the two prongs, I think, that I thought were important. But are they important for the admissions committee? Nobody knows, because every application is so unique in itself. People have done so different things, and I think that's the beauty of it, and the uncertainty of it, definitely. But again, now that leads to what is the problem and the misconception that exists, and that was the misconception that I was also fed into, but I did not buy it because I was not sure if that was the correct way. Everybody said there is no. First thing is that thinking that there is a single formula to get into Harvard Law School or any other law school. There is no single formula. If you were to do the exactly same things that I did, will you end up in Harvard Law School? There is no certainty of it. So this is important, to identify your uniqueness. It's not following that what these previous people who have gotten in, what were they doing? Right now, I think I was always told that possibility of getting into a law school from a law firm was slightly lesser, right? That is the conception that I was fed into. And I was also fed into the conception that doing a clerkship would increase your chances multifold into getting into a law firm. I knew about it. Of course, at all points of time, there would be one or two clerks that will make it to Harvard or various law schools in the US, because they look at clerkships quite prestigiously. But as it stands now, what are your real chances of getting in? Because there are almost 30 judges, more than 30 judges sitting in the court, in the Supreme Court. And even if I was to take a conservative 30 figure, each of them having 4 judges. So there are almost 120 of the clerks out there. So it's not that the competition, of course, you're going to be picked out of that bunch, but what is the uniqueness that you're bringing to the table? And I didn't like that kind of work. So that is what I was told to, that if you want to do an LLM, it's better you do a clerkship, etc. And I did not want to do a clerkship. And the second misconception is that you pertinently need publications. And I hadn't published as much, but that also I'm putting it with the caveat, because I was a purely practitioner's profile. That if you're from an academic profile that you're coming to the law school, they would be looking at your publications. Your publications assume importance. They become an important part of your personal statement, your CV. But I was never claiming that I'm an academic. I was claiming that I'm a pure practitioner, and this is what I do, and this is what I intend to do, and this is what I do on the policy side of things. So I was not claiming to be an academician. So it's important from which bracket you are following and how are you presenting yourself, and that therefore, as again, it links to the first thing, that there is no single formula that fits in. I was also told that an international experience is pertinent, of course, because it so happened that few of the people who had got into the law school before me, and I knew of them, had certain amount of international experience. Of course, it's a prestigious thing to have, but I did not have that in terms of international work experience. Yeah, that were the main conceptions that I was aware of. But having said that, they require you to be really good in what you're doing. You're excelling at what you're doing and putting in your work there. And that is something that is important. That's the quality that they're looking at. Yeah.
Right. So you did touch on it before, but could you offer some more tips for crafting a compelling personal statement that can capture the attention of the selection committee and at least increase one's chances of acceptance?
The first step is to be genuine, I think. Don't write what you think that the other person is expecting. Write what you are. That's the first step of writing a genuine. The second is that people tend to park the personal statement till off late. Don't do that. There is a biggest inertia to start your personal statement. You'd possibly be able to start your academic essay. You'd be able to start your CV. The biggest inertia that you face in any application process is to actually start your personal statement. And it's just that you don't want to start it. So the only solution is to just write 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, because once you get into it, that's when you start writing. And because you yourself, you're going to process things, because first you'll have a very, very rough structure that you want to write. And then you'd think, okay, fine, I can explore in this angle, I write on this. This also gets attached to my this life experience, etc. So that's how what I suggest is be genuine and start writing a personal statement. Don't be afraid to write your personal statement, and don't park it for very late, right? The second is, when they say it's a personal statement, they mean it's a personal statement. What largely we end up seeing is personal statement is just a reiteration of I did this, please take me in, therefore, and I like this about you. It's not that. Of course, these are important. It can, if I was to think of a personal statement, everybody thinks of personal statement very differently. And I can tell you that how I thought of the personal statement. I thought of the personal statement of, okay, fine, where I come from. How did I come to practice law? How did I come to practice insolvency and dispute resolution as 2 areas? What have I done in these areas? What do I intend to do in these areas? Or that is part of it. How is Harvard going to propel, or any other university going to propel that trajectory for me? And third is, of course, where do I see myself after having done this LLM? Don't make the personal statement sound that your life is contingent on this LLM. Your life is not contingent on the LLM. Even if you need to show that even if this LLM was not to happen, you're doing excellently well. And you should be doing excellently well. Of course, it should be a propulsion of sorts. It should be an add-on to your career, but your career should not hinge at this LLM or any other postgraduate education. It should be a means to something and not an end itself. And that's how you should look at a personal statement. And that's my short advice for it. Please don't reiterate your CV. Very, very important. See it as a contextualization, the backstory behind your CV.
So as I mentioned in your introduction also, your profile has already been shortlisted by the top schools, which is definitely a dream for many. But during the process, how did you prepare yourself to handle any prospective rejection if it was to come your way? So for students who are aspiring to pursue master's degrees from foreign law schools, especially when dealing with rejections, what advice would you share, and how did you personally approach such situations, and what was your mindset in handling them?
That's a really good question. So pertinently to say is that it looks very fancy from the outside that, okay, fine, you have done this, then this. But there is also a huge set of rejections that have happened. It's not that everything has worked out perfectly fine. You may have wanted your career to go in a certain way. It did not go in a certain way. You may have wanted to avail for a certain opportunity that did not happen. It will keep happening. And I seriously believe in the fact that if something is not happening at the time, it's okay. But I also caveat it with the point that put your best effort and then leave at it. I try to only control the vectors that are in my control, in a sense, and I don't try to stress off the vectors that are not in my control. Of course, it's easier said into words than putting into work, right? It's difficult to put it to work. An admissions decision is completely out of your control. What is in control is writing the application properly. Just focus on that. Focus on the process, don't focus on the outcome. Because if you start looking at the outcome while you're doing the process, I'm 110% sure you'd become afraid. You'd be like, whether I'm worth it. You'd question so many things. Therefore, the best way to is focus on the process always. Don't ever focus on the outcome, but focus dedicatedly there. It's not that you are doing a half-hearted effort. When you're doing it, you should be proud to own what actually comes out of that process. In a sense, you should be proud to say, okay, fine, my CV that I've made today could not have been better. My personal statement that I have written could not have been better. And I'm ready to lend my name to it. If somebody else was to see it, it's my, that's the only thing. And that's the output that you're trying to create, putting your name onto it. If you're writing an essay, write it in a sense that put your name onto it. So that's the simple thing. And of course, it's very difficult to practice. Did I falter in the process? I did. But there were days that you were like, there must be thousands of applications that they're getting. What is that? What I have done? Do I stand out in any way? It's a very difficult question to answer. You really don't know. And the only way to get to is, of course, just focus on the process. And let's move on to next. You get rejected, right? Of course, some people will get rejected. It's not that you will not get rejected. At certain places may reject you. So it's important to realize that it is possibly that they were looking for something else, right? And it's okay. Your profile may not fit into one law school. Your profile may fit for another law school. There are certain law schools which have a specialized degree. Like you wanted to apply for law and technology, and you have just 2 years of work ex. And next, there's a partner who is applying for law and technology in the same program. So, is there any problem with your application? No, it was just a matter of what they had at their hand and possibly that application that he had made. So it's completely not a judgment on your personal worth. And second is that I said earlier, always see this LLM as a means and not as something in an end. And that's the biggest problem that we start seeing in India, that everybody is want to see doing things to get into the LLM. That's not how I think it's correct way. You should do things that you want to do. If LLM comes along the way, well and good. If it does not come, it's okay. You are eligible to practice law, and that's what matters.
Are there certain aspects that you believe students often overlook during their undergraduate years, which later prove to be crucial during the application process for master's programs? And what advice would you give to ensure that the students be mindful of these aspects?
I think I have a take on it. People tend to ignore their interests. That's what they do during the undergraduate year. They tend to follow a set thing of, let's say, a formula that is given to or dictated by the seniors or what has been working for the university. And that's the biggest problem, right? After, I think in the second year or so, towards the end of the second year, you have an inkling as to what I want to try. Let's say people are not ready to take those risks is the question. And people in undergraduate year should be more risk averse. That I want to say is, for example, if you want to work, let's say in the constitutional court of a foreign country, apply there, right? If you want to work with a policy organization, apply there. Because there's over obsession with law firms in the sense, okay, fine. Its obsession has gone to the extent that people even before joining law school are joining law firms as paralegals or something. And that sounds quite not so impressive to me. Because that seizes your exploration process. Law firm, of course, can be a really good place to explore, to get sort of really good specialization, but you ought to be open to exploration, open to new areas of law. It's not simply, okay, fine, there is arbitration that exists and there's banking that exists. There is like uh, let's say, very select areas of technology. There are so many other areas that are opening up day in and day out. That's what I think the to having that risk appetite and really following their interests is something that is lacking. And also to thinking, this is the second thing, is they try to make it very, very single focused. Like they put their blinders on. It's, for example, if you're doing arbitration, that does not mean you can not do criminal law. You really can. That's singular focus that we create during our undergraduate years, that I'm going to create a profile in, let's say, arbitration, is very wrong. Because you have in first year somebody told you arbitration is an upcoming area, you just limited yourself, put blinders for doing anything beyond that. That is something very dangerous. Explore all areas by yourself, and then possibly take that call for yourself, that whether you want to do it or not. Don't say that law firm is bad without having experienced a law firm. Don't say an NGO is bad without having experienced an NGO. Don't say like a litigating office is bad without having experienced it. This happens, that happens. Because the experiences are so personal, they depend so much from person to person, where they worked at, who they worked with. So don't take anybody's else's experience for yourself, right? And so do it yourself and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Your strengths and weaknesses may be different. There, somebody who's telling you their strengths and weaknesses, their interests may have been different. So this exploration needs to be essential during the undergraduate year, and you should not rush to just. I see this over obsession with publications really early on. Take your time, even if you're publishing a single document or a single article in a whole year, just it should be the one you're ready to put your name on. Just don't publish for the sake of it. It doesn't really add on, because they're able to figure out which is what kind of articles you're writing, etc. So that's what I'll give. Even if you're bringing out output, it's good to bring out limited output but of great quality. That's an essential skill, I think, should be pertinent during the undergraduate years. Yeah.
Right. So do you have any specific academic projects in your mind that you intend to undertake during your course, or any projects that you would that would significantly contribute to your field of study?
I am exploring a few areas as of now. That's mostly due to in the domain of insolvency and bankruptcy, and because I'm still learning how US bankruptcy works and what can be done on a comparative scale, etc. But I'm still exploring, but soon I think I should be able to zero it down. There are 2 or 3 areas that I'm working on: insolvency in technology, how do we look at cryptocurrency, how do we look at cross-border. So these are the things that I was largely looking at, but I've still to take that call as to what I'll be writing my LLM paper on. I should be able to do that in next 2 or 3 weeks. That process is ongoing.
Right. So when it comes to LLM abroad, scholarships become a subject of prime importance for the candidates. And of course, it is a task to get shortlisted for a scholarship. Since you are a recipient of the KC Mahindra scholarship, could you please tell us about it? Like, how did you apply for it and what all does it include?
Okay, so scholarship is an important component. Nobody can deny that the LLM is an expensive affair. So KC Mahindra was the second step. The first I applied was for the respective financial aids. So Harvard has a very strong financial aid, but they have a need-based aid. If you need it, they'll ensure that you get it. Similarly, we experience at Yale that there's a very strong need-based financial aid. So once you get in, the possibility of you getting aid, if you genuinely have a need, you will end up getting an aid. So that will try to alleviate your concerns of whether you'd be able to attend the program or not. Because once you get in, they try their best that you end up attending the program, because you have made the cut on merit. At least at Harvard, you don't have merit-based scholarships, because they believe that if you've made it to the program, you are meritorious. There are other law schools which have even merit-based scholarships. We have, I think, a few in other law school, and NYU, Columbia, I remember applying. Stanford also has one of the scholarships. But certain schools are a little generous with it, while other schools are not. So applying to the financial aid of the respective institution should be the first step. You may well possibly end up getting 100% waivers, etc. Then, of course, moving on to more national, of course, before I move to the national scholarship. Similarly, in the UK, you make specific applications for while you're actually submitting your LLM application. You also submit application for scholarships. Like at Oxford, there was WHT that I applied for, and I've interviewed for it as well. But before the results came, I opted for Harvard, and at Oxford and Cambridge, there are also the college-based scholarship, because they follow a college system that you're allocated into a college. So once you get into the college also has a lot of scholarship. Let's say extras will have Harish Salve scholarship, and there are multiple other scholarships that are available on the university level, at the college level once you get there. And moving on to the national scholarships, there are quite a few. There's an Aga Khan Foundation scholarship. There is Tata, which I end up missing. There's KC Mahindra. There's Inlax. There's Shivning for if you want to study in the UK. If you have certain amount of experience, possibly Fulbright is an option for you. If you're slightly younger and confident, Rhodes is an option for you. So there are a whole set of scholarships that are there, but on a general trend that we have realized is, and that's my personal take on it, and I cannot say I haven't done empirical analysis on it. We've seen that the number of scholarships that are available to do an LLM in the UK are way more than to do an LLM in the US. US, you'd more likely than not will have to rely on your university aids as well. And how the application process looks like is they're not very, very comprehensive. They're largely, if you have done your LLM application process properly, then scholarship process seems slightly easy, because either they're too administrative or they would you'd have to remodel what you have already written for the application process. That's what these scholarships, Tata, I'm not sure, but KC Mahindra required 2 or 3 essays to be written. And I think they were also looking at financial need, but let's say Tata and both Mahindra are loan-based scholarships, in the sense, even if you were to get these scholarships, you have to return that money at some point in the future. And that's how they operate. And even the financial aids at these institutions, senior higher institution, is structured in a way that a part of it may be a grant and a part of it may be a loan. So of course, financial aid becomes important, but don't stop yourself from applying just because of that. It may well be possible that you get a generous financial aid and you're able to attend it. Do the process and then possibly take a call whether you're able to afford it or not. And then that's how I think it's a better way to proceed.
Right. So now we come to the last question. Based on your own journey and experiences, what advice would you offer to the current aspirants? How can young students stay motivated and maintain their dedication to achieving excellence in their academic pursuits?
I think I have a very general advice. I think that is not given usually. That is focus on your physical health. And of course, you have the motivation, you have everything. These cannot come from externally, these stay on the inside. But why I say is focus on your physical health is that it allows you to also have a stable mental health, and you already have these inherent things. You know what is important for you, what is that you want. It's just you may not be in a physical or a mental space to do it. It's important to be in the physical and the mental space to do it. And when I say this, one of the oft neglected condition is not, I'm not saying that you need to go and have the most shredded body that exists. I'm simply saying that each and every aspirant or any person who is there, even in the undergraduate study or thereafter, should involve in some amount of physical activity, in the sense that it can be going for a run, it can be playing some sport, because I think that really balances you out. It keeps you calm. It keeps you, and you would be able to think through these things really easily. Because why I said so is I think that worked out really well for me. And because while I was applying to these law school, I was also doing litigations. There were a lot of high value litigations that were on. So it becomes a very stressful time. And of course, stress in our profession is a sine qua non. It will remain as long as we are in the profession. So I think it's important to be out of the stress and have some time to yourself, give time to yourself, exercise, do something beyond your main stay that can be either studying while you're in school or practicing while you're in the profession. Give time to yourself, and I think that would be my only advice. And that's what I thought that while I was doing it, that this is the only thing that is keeping me calm. And if somebody was to ask me, what is one thing that I'll do again to do my application process, is keep on doing that. Also, that's I think all about it.
With this, I believe we have covered all the important things that we needed to know about LLM from abroad, starting from the application process, the presentation process, even the introspection process and the scholarships. So thank you so very much, sir, for accommodating our request despite your busy schedule. I'm very positive this video is going to be our ultimate guide to LLM from abroad and will be of utmost help to everyone who's watching it. Once again, on behalf of YLCC, I thank you for being with us here today, and I wish you a wonderful weekend ahead.
Thank you, Niharika, for having me on this. And I hope that what I've said comes out handy to someone who ends up listening to this. And all the best to whoever is writing it. But I just want to say that, of course, this should not be an end. It's okay. Apply and do things calmly. It will always be for the good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.